Hello and welcome back to Firestorm Games. You're joining us for another painting tutorial where we show you how to quickly paint the contents of a start collecting box. This time we've opted to tackle the Sylvaneth and we'll be painting the Tree Lord, Branch Witch and 10 Dryads to a tabletop standard as quickly as possible. The first step in speeding up your painting process is to part assemble your miniatures into colour groups. For your Dryads you won't need to worry about sub-assemblies, but your Tree Lord and Branch Witch can be broken down. For the Tree Lord, I would recommend keeping the joints and strangle roots apart, keeping the head, torso, feet and finally the main arm and leg sections separate from the joints as well. For the Branch Witch, separate the scythe, plait and the insect from the torso. Once the areas have been separated out, we need a way of holding onto them when painting that won't involve touching the component itself. Holders can be made by using a pin vise to drill some holes into the components and supergluing sections of wire into them. For larger components you can instead use superglue to glue small dowels or lollipop sticks to them for a better grip. When choosing the locations for holes or the sticks, I would recommend placing them at joints so that once the miniature has been assembled they won't be seen. By separating out areas, we now spray paint in different colours, which will save us a lot of time as we won't have to paint these areas using a regular brush technique. The two spray paint colours that I'll be using are Deathguard Green and Zandri Dust. Use Deathguard Green for the Dryads, the non-joint sections of the Tree Lord and also the Branch Witch torso and scythe. For everything else, use Zandri Dust. However, before I sprayed these colours onto our components, I first primed the areas with a grey primer first. This is because the Games Workshop paints don't make for very good primers, so you may find that your paint may accidentally rub away through use. So make sure that you use a proper primer first. With our base colours sprayed on, we can now start with our brushwork. The first step is to dry brush Nurgling Green over all of our Deathguard Green components. Don't worry about covering the branches that emanate from these parts, as we will tackle these in the next step. To dry brush, load up a brush with paint, remove most of the excess onto a piece of paper so only a small amount of paint remains in the bristles. Then lightly dust your brush over your components so your paint gathers on the raised details. The next dry brush colour to use is Karak Stone, and we'll be applying this to the same components as before, but this time we want to use it to pick out all of those branches. This gives them a lighter brown colour and helps to add some differences in colour. You can also dry brush any antlers, claws, fingers or scythe handles using this technique as well. Our final dry brush will involve the use of Ushabti Bone on our Zandri Dust base coated components, so simply follow the same techniques as before. In this next step, you'll want to take some slightly watered down Mephiston Red and use it to paint any leaves or gems that you may find on your miniatures. These red areas will really stand out against the more earthy tones of the rest of the miniature. You may find that some of your miniatures may have bones or skulls dotted about them, especially among your Dryads. For these areas, we want to pick them out using a base coat of Agrax flesh. With most of our base coats completed, we can now move on to applying some washes. The first of which is to apply Athonian Camoshade across all of your green areas. I would recommend mixing in a little clean water with your wash before you use it, and make sure you don't apply it too thickly. This will ensure that your wash only subtly darkens your recesses and won't overpower the overall colour. Following the same steps as before, apply an Agrax Earthshade wash to all of your Zandri Dust, Mephiston Red and Agrax flesh areas. After allowing your washes to dry, the next set of areas to paint are the glowing blue parts of the miniature. These include eyes, mouths, engraved symbols, the scythe head and any small creatures that may accompany your miniatures. We want to give these areas a glowing ethereal appearance, so start off with a base coat of Celestra Grey. Now don't worry about overspilling too much when painting the areas such as the eyes and the engraved sections, as this will just help to enhance that glowing effect. To create the ethereal glow, we will now apply a wash of Nihilakh Oxide over the areas we painted with Celestra Grey in the last step. This will flow into the recesses, creating a transition between the blue and white areas, which will create a glowing appearance. Now that everything's been painted, it's time to assemble your Tree Lord and Branch Witch. First of all, remove all of the metal and wood holders you created earlier. These should easily come out with a twist. Next, we want to remove the paint from the joints. You can do this with either a file or a sharp knife. It's important to do this step as we want to ensure that we have a plastic to plastic bond. If we glue painted sections together, the bond will be weak and likely to break apart. Once the paint has been removed, you can then glue the sections together. The final step is to base our miniatures. This can be achieved simply by using a brown textured paint such as Games Workshop's Sterland Mud or Vallejo's Dark Earth Texture Gel, with the latter being the superior of the two. Apply this textured paint over the whole base, but be careful not to overspill onto your miniature too much. After allowing the gel to dry thoroughly, wash over with either Agrax Earthshade or Nuln Oil. The choice is yours, but Nuln Oil will give you a darker overall colour than Agrax Earthshade. Once the wash has dried, use a Karak Stone dry brush to pick out the raised texture. You can then cover up any overspill along the side of the base with a couple of coats of Abaddon Black. Finish off by gluing some static grass, grass tufts or ground scatter of your choice to the base. And here we have the completed contents of the Start Collecting Sylvaneth box set. Hopefully these techniques should give you a good understanding about how you can shave off time when painting your miniatures, which will allow you to get them onto the tabletop as quickly as possible. Whilst I focused on the Tree Lord, Dryads and Branch Witch in this video, with some slight modifications you could easily transfer these techniques to any other Sylvaneth miniatures. You can find all of the paints used in this tutorial listed in the description below, as well as a link to the Firestorm Games web store. From there you'll be able to pick up all of the miniatures and materials used in this video for at least 10% less than the RRP. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please do let us know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe to be kept up to date with all of our latest videos. So we just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in and watching this video, and we hope to see you again on Firestorm Games.